I stood beside him for 8 years. Then, his other life destroyed everything. The house on Wellington Crest had always felt like it belonged to another world, a place where silence had a price tag and even the wind seemed to move politely. Clara had learned to move through it like a careful note in a long symphony, never too loud, never out of place, always attuned to the rhythm of her husband's life. She had been married to Adrian Vale for 8 years, and in that time she had built her identity around the quiet architecture of his success. He was brilliant, a rising legal mind who had argued cases that made headlines, a man whose words could dismantle arguments in courtrooms filled with powerful people who did not forgive easily. And now, after years of climbing, he had been appointed Chief Justice of the Federal Court, a position that transformed him from influential to untouchable. At least, that was what everyone believed. Clara had loved him when he was still building himself, when nights were uncertain and ambitions were louder than achievements. She had been there when he studied until dawn, when he forgot meals, when doubt sometimes crept into his voice like a shadow he tried to hide. She had held them together in ways no public record could ever capture, and she never once resented it. Or so she told herself. Her love was quiet, consistent, almost invisible to the outside world, the kind of devotion that does not demand acknowledgement. She did not need applause, she only needed him. The announcement of his appointment had changed the air around them. Suddenly their home was visited by dignitaries, journalists, old colleagues, people who spoke carefully, as if even laughter could be misinterpreted. Clara had stood beside him through it all, smiling appropriately, answering politely, learning to exist as part of his image rather than as a separate person. Adrian, for his part, had grown more distant in subtle ways, not unkind, but preoccupied, his attention stretched thin across responsibilities that now felt heavier than ever. Still, Clara told herself this was normal. Success demanded sacrifice. She had always been willing to give it. The first disruption came 3 days before his official swearing in. It was late afternoon when the doorbell rang, sharp and insistent in a way that did not belong to the usual rhythm of their home. Clara opened the door, expecting a courier or perhaps a journalist who had mistaken their address for a press contact. Instead, she found a woman standing there who looked like she had walked out of a life that had been unraveling for a long time. Her clothes were elegant but worn at the edges, her hair carefully styled but unable to hide exhaustion, and her eyes carried a kind of certainty that made Clara's stomach tighten instinctively. "I need to speak to Adrian Vale," the woman said without greeting, as though she had rehearsed the words many times before arriving. Clara hesitated. "He's not available right now. Can I help you?" The woman smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in it. "No, you cannot." She stepped forward slightly, just enough for Clara to notice the tremor in her hand. Not fear, but something closer to resolve. "My name is Danielle Cross. I've been involved with your husband for 6 years." The words did not land immediately. Clara blinked once, then again, as if repetition might change their meaning. 6 years did not fit anywhere in the reality she knew. 6 years meant before the promotion, before the public recognition, before most of the life they had built together in its current form. "I think you're mistaken," Clara said carefully, though her voice had already begun to thin. Danielle's expression softened in a way that felt almost pitying. "I wish I was." She reached into her bag and pulled out a phone. Not aggressively, not dramatically, but with the calm of someone who had already decided the outcome. She showed photographs first, blurred at the edges but unmistakably intimate. Then messages, then videos. Clara's mind tried to reject them in real time, to find inconsistencies, to construct explanations faster than her heart could collapse under the weight of what she was seeing. But the details were too specific, too personal, too invasive to dismiss entirely. "I have more," Danielle said quietly. "Enough to destroy him if I need to. But I didn't come here for revenge. I came because I want compensation. He ended everything when he found out about the Chief Justice appointment. Just like that, after 6 years. Clara felt something inside her go cold rather than break. "You're asking me for money."
"I'm asking for what I'm owed," Danielle replied. "He used me, promised me things. I made sacrifices for him, abortions, losses, secrecy. I protected his reputation while he built his career. And now he wants to erase me like I never existed." Clara's hand tightened slightly on the doorframe, the only thing anchoring her upright. "You should speak to him." "I already did," Danielle said. "He told me I was a mistake he needed to forget." The words hung in the air like something toxic. Clara expected anger to arrive next, or denial, or even collapse. Instead, what came was a strange stillness, the kind that forms when shock becomes too deep to express itself immediately. "I need proof," Clara said finally. Danielle almost smiled. "Then invite me in." And that was how the silence of Wellington Crest changed shape. Adrian returned home 2 hours later to find his wife sitting in the living room with a woman he did not recognize. The moment his eyes landed on Danielle, something subtle shifted in his posture. Not panic exactly, but recognition sharpened by control. Clara saw it immediately, and that small fracture inside her widened. "What is this?" he asked calmly. Danielle stood. "Hello, Adrian." Clara watched him carefully. "Do you know her?" A pause, just a fraction too long. "I know of her," he said. That answer was not enough, and he knew it. Clara saw the calculation behind his eyes as he tried to decide how much truth could safely exist in the room. Danielle stepped forward again. "Tell her the truth, or I will." Adrian exhaled slowly. "This is not what you think." It was such a familiar sentence in human history that Clara almost laughed, but nothing about her body felt capable of laughter. What followed was not a confession, not immediately. It was a negotiation disguised as explanation. Adrian spoke carefully, framing Danielle as unstable, obsessive, someone he had known briefly during a difficult period years ago. He acknowledged contact but minimized it, reframed emotional language as professional misunderstanding, intimacy as manipulation. Clara listened, not because she believed him, but because she needed to hear how far he would go to reshape reality. Danielle interrupted with precision. Dates, locations, details, proof. Each one landing like a small hammer against the structure Adrian was trying to build. Clara did not cry. Not yet. Instead, she asked a question that surprised even her. "Why now?" Danielle turned toward her. "Because I found out about the appointment, and because he told me I was disposable." That word lingered. Disposable. Adrian finally lost patience, though even that was controlled. "You are trying to blackmail me on the eve of a judicial appointment. Do you understand what you are doing?" "I understand exactly," Danielle said. "I understand better than you think." The tension shifted. Something had changed in her tone. Clara noticed it first. A steadiness that felt rehearsed, but not emotional. Danielle placed her phone on the table. "I recorded everything. Not just the past. The conversations you've had with me this week. The threats. The denial. All of it." Clara looked at the phone, then at Adrian. For the first time, something real flickered across his face. Not fear of exposure, but fear of timing. And that was when Clara realized something deeper. This was not just a scandal. It was a test. The next morning, the story had already begun to move outside the house. Not publicly yet, but through quiet channels. Someone had leaked fragments, anonymous reports, whispered allegations. Adrian insisted it was sabotage, politically motivated, orchestrated by rivals who feared his appointment. He became more controlled, more distant, more polished in his responses, as if emotion itself was now a liability. Clara, however, began to notice inconsistencies not in Danielle's story, but in Adrian's reactions. The precision of his denials, the absence of surprise, the way he never once asked for full access to the evidence, only dismissed it categorically. It was not the behavior of someone falsely accused, it was the behavior of someone managing risk. On the second day, a twist emerged that neither woman expected. Danielle returned alone, this time asking to speak to Clara privately. "I lied," she said immediately after sitting down. Clara stared at her, bracing for impact. "About what?" "Not the relationship," Danielle clarified quickly. "That part is true, but I'm not here for money." Clara frowned. "Then why?" Danielle's voice lowered. "Because I found out something else. Something he doesn't know I know." She slid a document across the table.
Internal legal correspondence, financial tracing, a pattern of offshore accounts linked indirectly to cases Adrian had overseen. Claire's breath caught. What is this? Danielle looked at her carefully. This is why he really wants the appointment finalized before anything comes out. The house on Wellington Crest was no longer just a home. It had become a pressure chamber. That evening, Clara confronted Adrian again, but differently this time. She did not accuse. She observed. She watched his reactions instead of his words. And for the first time, she saw something fracture that could not be controlled. "You're not telling me everything," she said quietly. Adrian met her eyes. "Neither are you listening to everything." It was not a denial. It was a deflection. And Clara understood then that her marriage had always existed alongside a second life she had been excluded from. The final twist came on the eve of the swearing-in ceremony. Danielle disappeared. No warning, no message, just gone. But she left behind one final file, delivered directly to Clara. Inside was a full recording, not of intimacy, not of manipulation, but of a conversation between Danielle and Adrian discussing something far more dangerous. A coordinated arrangement involving influence, sealed testimonies, and suppressed investigations that had quietly shaped multiple high-profile rulings. Clara sat alone in the dark for a long time after listening. The man she had supported, protected, and loved was not simply a man with a secret affair. He was a man standing at the edge of institutional power built on carefully buried compromises, and she now held the only copy of evidence that could stop him. The morning of the appointment arrived bright and ceremonial. Cameras gathered, officials prepared. Adrian stood in tailored confidence, shaking hands, smiling for photographs, every detail of his public image intact. Clara stood beside him, as she always had. But this time, she was holding a decision instead of a role. And when the ceremony began, somewhere between oath and applause, she quietly walked away from the man who had believed she would always remain silent beside him.